Today, we are diving into the delectable do's and don'ts of dialogue. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie authors on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
And we're still praying for Christina Catane, our co-host. She has been out dealing with some medical issues, but happy to say that she is well on the mend, and hopefully we can look forward to her return soon. I know that she appreciates all of your prayers and well wishes. It's been keeping her spirits up, and so hopefully we'll see her back very shortly. Also, hello to anyone who is able to join us live today. I see Sarah Halda. I think that's how you pronounce your name. She's the Cozy Mystery Mom. Oh, love that. Very mysterious. Hi, SL Parent and Christy, and also Sadie, who we know is our little homeschool pal, chumming along with Mom. Very good to see you all today. If you're able to join us on Fridays at 10 o'clock Eastern, we have a very vibrant and active chat community. We also have a wonderful, wonderful community over in our Facebook group, listeners of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. Join us over there for even more information and shenanigans. So on with the podcast, Jen. Usually we go around the table, but it's just across the table now. We're dwindling in numbers, but we like to find out what's up. So what's up with you, Jen?
So last night, we went, my girls and I and our friend Hallie, we went to see the a local high school, Davison High School, did the musical Newsies. And
Really?
it's one of our favorite musicals. My daughter Chloe especially is like crazy about it. And she's the one that spotted the sign hanging up in town when we were in town. We were literally driving by the flower shop and it was on the flower shops. Like, I don't even know how she spotted it. She's like, Mom, turn around. And so we bought tickets and we went. And I gotta say I had pretty low expectations because it's a high school musical, right?
Mm.
So good. Those kids worked so hard. You could tell that like they put in so much time for even the dance numbers. I didn't expect the dance numbers. Not everyone's a dancer, right? But you could tell they had worked hard and were putting in like 150%. And I'm telling you, the leads on this, especially the boys that played Jack and played Davy, man, like they just very talented young men. And it was just so much fun to get out and see this. Like I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. And their pit band was great. And like, yeah, it was just a really fun night to be able to go out. And it was inexpensive because it's a high school, production. So yeah, we had a really good time. And it's the school district that my kids used to go to before we started homeschooling. And mind you, my kids are pretty little and pulled them out, but my daughter spotted the name of one of her friends that in the pit band in the program. So she's like, I want to stay and try to see her. And I'm like, okay. Well, I mean, it's been years. So like, is that her? Is that her? And I'm like, look, and so we point, I'm like, I think that's her. And so Chloe's like super shy. So she's like, oh, and I'm like, it'll be weird if an old lady goes up to her and says, hey, is your name such and such? So my little Phoebe is like, come on, Chloe, I'll go with you. And so they did. And sure enough, it was her. And my daughter just said her name. I was like, are you in? And she went, oh, Chloe. And like, it was just so great. They hugged and like exchanged phone numbers. And that did my mama's heart good. Because that's the one thing with pulling your kids from homeschool, to homeschool them. I know we made the right decision and it has been, my kids have blossomed, but there's still a little bit of that. Like you miss your old friends and my kids are never going to be able to do a high school musical like that. But yeah, it was a great special night. And I'm just really glad we did it.
It's really wonderful to go see live theater. There's nothing like it. It's so hard to explain, but I think it's just the contract between the audience and the people on stage that you're all gonna suspend belief.
Yes.
And just for this couple of hours, we're all just gonna like play pretend that we're somewhere else. It's like really special. You just don't get that in the movies.
Agreed. And like in the movies, they act more like us, but in musicals and in plays, they have to be, you know, this more than me. You're a stage person, I'm not, but like a little bit more over the top. And I think that's one of the things you find when you find like high schools or even middle schools that are doing productions. Like the kids are just a little bit more like, they don't put all that out there. And I'm telling you, the guy that played Jack, this kid was like, all over the top. You know how Jack's personality is just very much like, and his New York accent was on point. It was so much fun, like to watch.
That's great.
And to
Yeah.
know as a parent, like that's a lot of work. These kids put a lot
Mhm.
of work into this, and it just turned out great. The set design was awesome. Like it just really great. So
That's wonderful that the sign worked to get you to go too, because high school audiences, they want to attract people who don't have children in the performance. So that's
mhm.
really good that advertisement worked. And now you're plugging it. So if
I
anyone's local and can catch,
go.
whatever's left of the show.
It was like $12. You go online and you purchase the tickets and you get to pick your seat just like you would if you were going to a regular theater production. You don't have to fight for a seat. We were able to I only bought them 2 days ago and I got really good seats. So yeah, like do it.
And a
If you
pit orchestra.
a
Like
real pit
the
orchestra.
last time I saw Les Mis, there was not an orchestra, and
Really?
I paid big money to go see that. Yeah.
That's sad. That is really sad.
Mhm.
You know, and like they're high schoolers, so there was a few like moments where I was like, you know, because I do know music. That's
Yeah.
but they're high schoolers, so like you absolutely forgive that. But like Davison has always been really known for their music. Like they have a really, really good music program, and so you will again this is suspending disbelief. Like you will forget that these are high schoolers when you're sitting watching this and you're listening to the music, and it's just amazing. It was really, really well done. So,
That's so great.
hey, we have some more chatters. Mary is with us
Yeah.
this morning. Good morning, Mary. And our friend Piper is here. Hi, Piper. Hi, hi, hi. So, all right, Jamie, what's up?
I don't know really. I guess I can say I've been revisiting audiobook land because I
Oh.
have been deciding to put more of what I have in print already into an audiobook format with
Mhm.
the ideal of possibly making some sort of a compilation. And that's been interesting to get back into that because I do appreciate the process. I do appreciate the finished product. It's so funny because I feel like an audio version of a book is almost another piece of work. So, are you familiar with the book Ender's Game?
Yes. Mhm.
There is an audiobook of it that has, I think, two narrators. There might be three narrators. It's been years since I listened to it with my kids, but the author said that this is how he envisioned Ender's Game kind of coming to life, far and above any movie that could have ever been put out,
Mhm.
because it's listening to the tale being told, and it's just I just have an affinity for audiobook narration in general. And it's interesting too because there's the LibriVox project, and it's so interesting to try to listen to a LibriVox production of something that's in the public domain and
Mhm.
then find a professionally produced piece of work that's in the public domain
Mhm.
and try to compare what is making the narrator a quote unquote professional versus these volunteers, right? And there's just
Right.
something about the art of it, the craft of it, that I'm just really appreciating. And anyway, I guess that's what I would say is my what's up
Yeah.
for this week is just kind of dabbling back into that world. And hooray, it's my writing. So, like, I'm kind of paying
Mhm.
attention to that in my free time. So, that's a positive step, I guess, in the right direction.
I think it's cool how our what's ups kind of intersect too, like in the art of it, right? Like I think the difference between like someone who's a professional and a volunteer is someone who's been trained, right? And I think what I enjoyed so much about this production is that the training for these kids, like the musicians clearly have been through years of training through the Davison schools. And you could tell that the students that were acting and that you could tell they had been trained. They weren't just given the roles and told where to stand. Like that whoever is running the show knows how to direct and how to train the art of presenting in a musical format. Like it was just, yeah, it was so same thing with, I agree with you with audiobooks, and this could be a whole nother episode. I know we've talked about audiobooks before, but I would love to get somebody on who will be honest. That's going to be the hard part about, like, we know that like it's costly to get audiobooks done, or you trade part of your ownership away to where you share the royalties. So it's going to be one or the other. But with AI, the way that it is now, like, is it worth it? Are people just going to like lean into the AI? I think that what the answer is going to be is that you're going to have people that are just going to lean into the AI, and then you're going to have other people that are going to see the art of it. I think that the in between is going to kind of fade away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because
And
I've known of people who are visually impaired who appreciate anyone reading the text to them so that they can appreciate the book. But
yeah,
then there is somebody who listening to an audiobook is akin to listening to music, or
yes.
and and it has to feel a certain way, or it's actually intolerable to listen
Mhm.
to. So if you are someone who just needs the information and you're not a person who appreciates the audio component, it would
Right.
not matter if it's a voice as dry as the desert, and
Right.
you're happy enough with that.
And unfortunately, the AI isn't dry as a desert anymore. Like, it sounds pretty legit, and it doesn't just read the words, it scans the whole document for the feel and for, like, the tone of like even a chapter, and provides that to the readers. So it's kind of crazy to me, but I think it's production value too. Like you're saying, like some people are going to be okay with that. And most of the times I'm okay with that because I'm usually like reading listening to an audiobook when I'm doing something else, like when I don't have time to sit down with a book. But then there's those times that you want that production value, that you want to feel like sometimes a really well produced audiobook is so much better than a movie because you get the full book. You don't get anything cut out. You don't lose anything that the author intended. So yeah, so I think that that's going to be the difference between, because AI is never going to be able to do that. I don't think. I shouldn't say that, but I don't think so. Interesting conversation for another day, I'm sure. But also, speaking of interesting, Christy says, Jamie, I saw on Instagram that porch cows are a thing. Might want to warn Kurt.
Does Kurt need a buddy?
Porch
Hmm,
cows? I gotta see, like, where you dress them up. Now I gotta
how
go. I can't look now. We're
fun.
we're live, but I so bad want to go look right now. And do they have like Highland cows and milking cows and
Aw.
Jersey cows? Like, this could be a whole thing. I might want a porch cow.
Yeah,
'Cause
by the time Christmas rolls around, I might have enough characters to do the nativity in porch animals.
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Chrissy says real
What?
cows. What? Wait, what?
Huh.
Okay, now I'm we don't have time for this right now, but we will later. As
Yes.
soon as we're done here, I'm gonna be looking up porch cows. Like, you just have your own cow and it just hangs out on your porch. Like, I have a little porch. I don't think it's gonna work, but that's weird. That's funny. Okay.
Okay, so oh, thanks, Piper. I see your little note there.
Yep.
I do appreciate you. Okay, so we're gonna shift into our topic of the day, which is so interesting. As I was doing my writing sprint today, about halfway through it, first of all, I did not like what I wrote. This is totally a bunny trail, sort of, but I was also like, I think the dialogue in this is terrible. Like just as I'm still trying to just sprint and shut off that inner editor. I think because our discussion in preparing for this episode just kind of put dialogue to front of mind for me.
Right.
And what we are talking about today is the do's and don'ts of dialogue. And the reason it's the do's and don'ts of dialogue is because when we started to flesh out dialogue in general, we had so much meat to share with you that we decided we needed to split it up, and that we are going to have two episodes about dialogue just because it's so much to unpack. But for
Yes.
today, it's just kind of like the do's and don'ts, not the
Right.
how to. Right, Jen?
Right, right. We're gonna hit on that next week. But can I say something really quick? I'm so glad that you
Yeah.
mentioned your sprint. Like, the advice and the things we're gonna talk about today, do not let this stop you from writing. Like Jamie was right she was correct to keep writing. Like these are things that when you're going back and fine tuning your writing, you'll look at your dialogue and you'll answer these. Does it do this? Does it not do this? These are the things you look at, but really get your button and chair, sit down and write, sprint and get the words on paper. And then you work these things out later. Eventually it comes naturally. A lot of this stuff that we work on, it comes naturally eventually.
Yes, Jen. And as you're talking, I'm sitting here like thinking, oh, the audience is not going to want to hear this. But it's like you need to write a whole lot of terrible dialogue
Yeah.
before you get to where you're doing it well. Just like any other kind of writing, you've got to
Yes.
write a whole lot that you're not super, like that is not a literary masterpiece before you can get there. Just even as I was audio recording some things I had written in like 2019, I was
Mhm.
like, just pretending I was doing a paid job for another whole person because the
Mhm.
writer that I was back then is another whole person.
Yeah.
And my choices would be different today, but I was not going to let that stop me from putting it out there because I mean, I thought it was good enough back then. I don't even
Right.
know. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you just, unfortunately, all of this just comes with time, but you've got to do it bad a lot before you'll do it well, I
And
guess.
here is another like kind of reason for for everybody to do sprinting with us on
Mm-hmm.
Fridays is
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of you guys know all these things we read, they don't all end up in our books. Some of it is
Mm-mm.
just for fun. Like I wrote in Marnie's World again today because it was fun. And if you practice something that is just fun for you and you don't put that pressure on you that it's going to have to be published, then this will help you with things like dialogue, which is what we're going to talk about today.
All those kids in the orchestra pit played really, really badly before they played well for hours and hours and hours. And for
Yes.
some reason, writers think that they're going to be exempt from having to do that. It's just not the case.
Agreed.
Anyway, I've been
I,
lecturing.
so many people are looking for the shortcut to being a writer, but there is no
Yes.
shortcut, right? So
No.
Christy wants to say, well, I'm in luck because I've written lots of really bad
All
dialogue.
right. You're on your way.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up.
All right.
Okay. So, first of all, what is even the purpose of dialogue, right?
Right.
And that's kind of some of the do. The purpose
Right.
of dialogue, yeah, it's not just what is it for?
So you guys have heard us say this before, but if it doesn't move your story forward, it doesn't belong in your book. Again, this is not the writing process. This is going to be later. But maybe when you get a little more seasoned and you're writing, if you start writing and you're like, this does not matter to my story, then you can stop it, right? But dialogue will do the same thing. It'll help you reveal your character, their personality, their background, their beliefs. Like if like it today in my writing, one of the things that Marnie says in her head is God was merciful, right? So that gives you a little bit, like it's internal dialogue, but still that gives you a little bit of insight in her belief system, and it'll help advance the plot.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like if they're just talking about the weather and it doesn't have anything to do with the plot, it doesn't move the story forward, then you're just writing stuff. It really isn't good dialogue.
Yes, and to Jen's point, just backing up a bit about revealing character. A lot of times, I will advise for someone to sit down and just write an argument between their characters, because sometimes that dialogue exercise will reveal to you more about the character, which will in turn help you know how they would react and how they would advance the plot. So
Yes,
it's like the dialogue can reveal to you, the author, sometimes more about your character.
agreed.
If you have good dialogue, also, it can build some tension or conflict.
Right. Another example like of a thing you can do, a practice that you can do, and it helps you to practice building tension and conflict, is Jamie and I have both done it before where we've written an entire sprint with only dialogue. No
Mm-hmm.
tags, no like no discussion of what's happening, no action writing. It's just dialogue. And that really forces you to have two different voices so it doesn't sound like the same person. It forces you to like it can cause conflict because if they're just talking about the weather, it's not exciting, and you get bored
Mm.
too. But when you have to only focus on the dialogue, then it helps you to like learn to put the tension in there and the conflict in there between the two people.
Yes, and maybe we should try that as our sprint for next week, even though we've done it before. But
Mhm,
also, I wonder what the reverse exercise would be if you leave out dialogue and you
mhm.
could then recognize what a useful tool it would be. If only
Yes,
you could have them say.
right.
And sometimes I think it's what they don't say that
Mhm,
also can help build tension or conflict. Like, so if somebody gives a short answer like, okay, or fine, and
right,
that can build tension and conflict just
right.
because of the choice that you make with that dialogue.
Yeah. The other 2 great things I think that you get out of doing that, practice that we just mentioned is it helps you to learn how to give, like, dialogue and exposition naturally because you have to only rely on what they're saying. And
When you
so
so exposition, you mean just kind of like what's going on in the plot or like background
yes.
information?
Yes, without it sounding like you remember when we went to college together at Boston University and we lived in the dormitories that were called Warren Towers? We would never say that to a college friend. We would say, Remember back in freshman year?" And that's all you would say, right? So by practicing dialogue and good dialogue is gonna do that more naturally. Um
Mm.
and it also a good dialogue, I think the last thing we would say that a major do for good dialogue is that it shows relationships between characters, which again, doing only dialogue practice will be a good practice for that. But when you have two characters, like let's just talk about my Marnie character, the way that she talks with her coworkers and the way that she react, like the conversations between her and Mr. Boss are different because it's different relationships. People that she's intimidated by, she reacts differently and talks differently than the person that she's just like butting heads with and she's fed up with. Right. So, um,
So interesting, Jen. Can we
mhm,
talk for a minute about show, don't tell in the context
okay,
of dialogue? Because
sure.
I think a lot of times when we say show, don't tell, we talk about like she flopped down on the couch and sighed. And so that's instead of saying she was tired, right?
Hmm.
So you can have that same practice when you're doing good dialogue, right? You
Agreed.
can show, don't tell within the dialogue, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that helps us move into our downfall, our pitfalls. These are the
Mm,
don'ts with
mhm.
dialogue. I think that what you're getting at is don't info dump. Do not
Well,
use
yeah.
dialogue to info dump. So I kind of mentioned the Boston University freshman, with name of the tower, like things you would not do. But taking and crafting slowly and then through conversation and way a natural conversation would happen between two people can help give information in a way that would make it feel very info dumpy if you were just to write it.
And let me just say, this is a very big plug for kind of getting outside. If you're an introverted writer and you're a little bit people averse,
Hmm.
here is a challenge for you, and that is to get out into public spaces, if only to eavesdrop on people,
Yeah.
to hear how they naturally talk to one another. If you just can't bring yourself to be a little more social in that way, watch lives on social media or go on to Clubhouse and listen to how people really talk, because they don't say, like Jen said, remember when we owned that old house and the roof was leaking and then the cat died. Like, they don't just info dump when they're
Hmm.
talking. They'll give these little breadcrumbs or plot points or something, and then the other person will pick it up and add, you know and I
Hmm.
think it's a little bit tricky though, Jen, because even as I'm offering this advice, you do run into something like the old couple that has to say one word to each other and they understand.
Right.
So yes, that would, you have to know your character.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Piper makes a good point here. She says, at the paper, my editor once told me to save the quotes for the stuff that won't have the same punch if summarized. She says she doesn't completely stick to the same model in fiction, but close. So I like that. I think that that you can use the dialogue to make things more punchier, to like give information. Instead of saying, Marnie's angry, Marnie was mad. I would have Marnie turn to him and say, I'm sick of looking at your face. right? So, like, clearly she's mad, right? But I've used
Mhm.
dialogue to show that instead of just saying she's mad. So, good.
So that's interesting. It seemed it would I would then question Piper, and I would want to know, is she a little dialogue averse? Are her works lighter in dialogue? Would she say? Hmm.
Interesting.
So so another don't is to have characters that sound too similar. And you're like,
Yes.
sound too similar? This is not an audiobook. What do you mean sound too similar? Jen, care to kind of try to describe what we're talking about?
Again, this comes with practice, right? And it also the eavesdropping thing on other people, I think is a good thing to listen to, like, the way people talk and not just accents. The way that they, like, maybe stutter or the way that they start every sentence with like. Like, when I was going to school, like, if you put like in a sentence a whole bunch for somebody in their dialogue, it gives you an automatic picture of that person. The picture might be different for you than it is for me, but it still gives your reader a picture. You find different ways to make their dialects different so that you can tell without even giving any sort of tag, who is speaking.
If you want sort of I guess I wouldn't say masterclass in this exactly because it doesn't exactly fit, but if you've ever read Flowers for Algernon, which is about a man who starts off with a intellectual disability who is given like scientific enhancements to make him more intelligent, and the difference between him in the beginning of the story
Mm,
and him toward the end of the story is profound, and they sound like different people because they have different intellectual capabilities. Of Mice and Men is another good example. You've got two characters who are very different in that similar way, and you can tell who's talking based on word choices that the author used, etc. You
mhm,
don't want everybody in your book to sound the same way. And I'm sure
right,
if you took a difference, so let's say Scarlett O'Hara versus Melanie Wilkes,
mhm,
they sound different. And even though
yes,
they're both raised in the same environment, because they are different people, they sound different. And it's not about how they're acting, it's about how their dialogue is written.
agreed, absolutely agree. I do wanna give a little bit of a warning here though too, is don't overdo accents and don't overdo the
Mm-mm.
difference. Um,
Mm.
if you are writing, let's say, a Scottish accent, if you write every single thing the way you hear it, and then someone when they're Scottish and they read it, they're gonna be like, "What is this garbage?" Because they're gonna see the same words on the paper if we wrote it in just in English. I don't know how to put this, but they don't hear their accent the same way you do. So you put little bits in there. Like when I write somebody from Michigan, I give them a Michigan accent. But if I write every single accent in there, like, then I just said like, if I put every single accent in there, it might become unreadable to the person. And someone in from Michigan is going to read that and go, that's not how I speak, because they don't see that they actually say I'm gonna instead of I'm going to. In their mind, they're
Mm.
saying I'm going to, even though it's I'm gonna. I might choose to put I'm gonna in the writing, but then I'm gonna choose to not make the entire rest of the sentence look ridiculous. Does that make sense? Like you have to
Mhm.
use it sparingly and make decisions like that. But so just don't overdo it. But it is important to do it. So
Yes, and if you've got questions about that, I'm sure we're going to be talking more about that next week also. I would love
yes.
to get into more of those choices. I'm saying it out loud, so hopefully remember to put it in the outline. Another thing you don't in dialogue is to overuse names in conversation. Even in real life, I found people maybe read a book somewhere that said a person's name is the most important sound in the world. And I feel like some people talking to me have read something like that and they say my name way too many times in a conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm like, eh.
Right.
So you don't want to put it in your book. I mean, unless you're trying to write somebody who read too many of
Right.
those books and too much of that advice.
Right. So think about when it's important to use somebody's name in real life. For my when I'm mad at my kids, or not mad, but when I'm trying to get their attention or they're in trouble, I say their name. I usually say their full name. Or when I'm like somebody's being ridiculous, I'll be like, Jamie, come on. Like that's when I would say Jamie. I'm trying to think of the times that I would say your name. Or when she would again say something ridiculous and I laugh, I'm like, Jamie, and I
Mhm.
laugh. right? So you think about times that you would in normal conversations say that, then that's when you would use it. If you're using it more, wouldn't use it in regular conversation, then just don't do it. So
Agree.
the next thing I think that is important too, um that that would be a pitfall that you gotta make sure you avoid is the dialogue that doesn't move the story forward. Again, we talked about it a
Mhm.
little bit earlier, but we don't need to hear about the weather. I've talked about this in the past that I have a book that I wrote about a female pastor. Um, you don't get a full sermon. You don't need to hear the full sermon. You might get like a bit of the sermon, but I just let you know that is preaching. And then, but what I instead focus on is what's happening emotionally to people, or what's happening like physically around the room. That's more important than the everything that she said. So it has to move the story forward. And on that same vein, do not give a monologue that you disguise as conversation. Again, it'll be
Right.
info dumpy for sure. If it's a huge long paragraph, it's probably too long. There are
Mhm.
exceptions, but chances are you're not the exception. So take a look at the big giant chunks of conversation and see if you're just hiding a monologue in there for no reason.
I might say the one genre that could get away with this is mystery. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes, even as I'm listening to these mysteries, I'm just like, why do they get to info dump so much? It's so unfair. And yet, these are like best selling
Yeah.
trad pub because that's just the nature of the beast. But anyway, that's a bunny trail. For the most part, don't do it.
Right.
Okay, now characteristics of strong dialogue.
Right. So all the do's,
Mm,
here's how you do the
mhm.
do's,
All
right?
right.
It's got to sound natural. We talked about this a little bit
Mhm.
earlier. Like it has to sound like somebody else would be saying it to another person,
Yeah,
minus all the ums and likes. And, you can put those in, but sparingly because nobody needs to hear those. And when we listen to somebody, when we're having a conversation, we don't really, they called empty words. Like you don't really hear the empty words. Like, just did it again. Now I keep hearing myself say like, um, and see, like those are things that I had stripped from myself because my degree is in communications and I had stripped all that from my language. And I have lived here in Michigan, not being a professional for long enough that it's all seeped back in. So that needs to reflect someone's unique voice. Make sure
yep,
that you can hear their unique voice. And if you can't tell the difference, you've not spent enough time with your character.
correct.
So
Mhm.
spend some time writing conversations with them, answering questions about them. Just hang out with your character for a while in things that you're never going to publish so that you get to know your character.
Exactly.
Yeah. It should be
Um,
concise
yep,
and have purpose.
yep.
Um,
And you don't want to have it be too like rigid.
mm,
I
yes.
don't really know exactly how to say it. Like, well, here is the correct grammar for this sentence, and so this is how these people shall speak to one another.
Right.
There's a time and a place for that if you're trying to make a character be that way, but for the most part, you need it to have like a natural cadence
The
and a
rest of your
natural,
writing should be proper grammar.
yeah.
Your dialogue is where you should be more natural with it. Agreed.
Mhm. And you don't want it to be direct and obvious and what they say on the nose. Like you don't want it to be like, gosh, I'm trying to think of a good example, Jen. Like, well, that's exactly why, the butcher knife was missing from the butcher block. Like,
Right.
hello, Captain Obvious kind of a thing.
Right.
And so if you see that kind of stuff, maybe think about finessing the line or turning it into a non-dialogue. You just don't want it in there.
I think that's a good point, non-dialogue. I think that you have to also have a balance between external dialogue and internal dialogue
Oh, yes.
because
Mhm.
it's so very important for the reader to know some things that is happening internally with your character that everyone else doesn't know. It adds to the conflict and the frustration because like if you would just say that out loud, or sometimes it just helps us to fall in love with our character a little bit more. So
One of the reasons why the book is better than the movie is because the
yes.
movie cannot communicate to your reader all of that internal. A good actor can make their face look how as the reader it read, but if someone didn't read the book, they'd be missing out on all of that
Right.
juicy, delicious internal, right?
And not just internal, but also subtext. Meaning, like,
Mm-hmm.
what is left unsaid?
Yes.
When a character says something, like you mentioned earlier, they just say fine, and they say nothing else. There's subtext there. What else is being left unsaid that is kind of obvious?
Mm-hmm.
It'll create tension through the implication. Like,
Yeah.
what are they implying by what they're saying? Like when there's a lot of subtext with what Mr. Boss talks and the
Yes.
things that I write.
Double
Um,
entendre if you're
yes,
looking for
e-
it.
exactly. So using your dialogue for that is super important because you want to let your reader read between the lines. There's
Yes.
nothing worse. Well, there's probably lots worse, but there's nothing worse than a book that tells you everything you're supposed to think, because
There's
that's
not
not
much
fun.
worse than that, but yeah.
It's just not as fun. You have to know how intelligent your reader is and let them be smart enough to be able to read between the lines.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun of reading a book anyway, is that you get your whole different interpretation of it. I could count, like, I could not count on one hand the number of times I've brought a piece to writing group and Jen is like, oh, I can tell, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, that's not at all what I was thinking, but I think it's amazing that her built in subtext looker for her or whatever filter gave her this like interpretation of what I wrote, and that's part of the art of writing, and it's really wonderful to give that
Yeah.
experience to your reader.
And the really fun thing is when you leave the subtext hoping that your reader gets it, and then you get the feedback that your reader totally got it.
Yeah,
That's so
it's a
fun.
great feeling for
It's a
sure.
great Well, I remember with my first editor, I think I mentioned this just last week or the week before, in my first book, part of the mystery of like how something happened is because the brothers got their jackets switched, and they went to the theater, and the one brother's a little bit larger than the other brother, and so I mentioned in her internal dialect that when he leaned forward, his jacket pulled a little bit too tight, and then you find out later that their jackets were switched, and my editor was like, you don't even realize what you did, but like, because I'm like, no, I totally realized what I did. That was on purpose. And I had her like internally acknowledge that she noticed that. So yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah.
what a good feeling. So that subtext, it can serve you well.
Yep.
Okay, well, I could talk about this apparently for a lot longer, Jen. Good thing we have another episode to talk about dialogue, right? Because we're just kind of getting warmed up. I feel how sad,
I know.
but if we do move on, we can do the feeding of the backs, which
I'm
is
super
my
excited
favorite.
about it.
You're super excited?
Yes.
Yes, I'm excited.
I'm super excited for it because I love when I write in Marnie's world. Also, I wrote way longer than 15 minutes. I can stop. I put a little thing so that I knew where to stop where the 15 minutes were, but I had extra time and there was nobody to chat with me like there usually is. So I just kept
Sorry.
writing. No, it's fine. I kept
All
writing
right.
and I still didn't even get to the prompt. Like, I'm leading up to the
Oh,
prompt, but yeah. So I can either just read what I
you
should.
we might have time for you to read it all. We've got some extra time, and mine is pretty short.
Okay.
All right,
All
let's
right.
hear it.
So this week our prompt was something you regret saying.
Okay.
And I chose this because it was supposed to have a title or a topic this week. But I still decided to do something that was not like nonfiction. I actually wrote in my Marnie world.
Hmm.
Um, and I will say that I started writing and then I changed it up because I didn't like how I started one place. I'm like, no, I want to get before this and see how she got into the room. So I
Mm.
started over. So, all right. Something you regret saying. This day couldn't get any worse, Marnie thought, until she walked through the door. The only person sitting at their desk was a receptionist. Every other office desk and cubicle were empty. You're late, was the only greeting the blonde with no smile offered. Great deduction, Matlock, Marnie thought. She didn't need the reminder that she was late. What she needed was an explanation as to where everyone was. They're all in the conference room. Detective and mind reader? Marnie would have would Marnie would have to become friends with this one. She might prove herself useful. The conference room, the meeting. Oh no, Marnie groaned. Not only was she late the first week of work, she would have to walk into a room full of strangers with the totality of her lateness on full display.
Ugh.
She rushed past the rows of cubicles and found, to her great relief, that although the room was full of people, the meeting had not started. Co-workers sat quietly chatting about their weekends. Nobody seemed to notice her arrival. Once again, God had been merciful. There were only 2 seats left in the room, one at the head of the conference table, the other along the back wall, nestled in the corner. She was unwilling to lead this meeting, so she chose the latter. She settled in and pulled out her laptop. She noticed that no one else brought a laptop. A few had iPads and a few others had paper and pen. Many brought nothing with them to the meeting, which she found odd. But her laptop felt safe, almost security blanket safe, as she
Mm-hmm.
nestled herself even further into the depths of the corner. She felt blocked in, as if out of sight of everyone, which she liked. But she also liked that it gave her a great view of the rest of the room. She didn't like people looking at her, but she didn't mind looking at the others. Before she had any more time to people watch her new coworkers, 2 men walked into the room. Mr. Boss and someone Marnie could only assume was Mr. Boss's father. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Boss's dad said cheerfully as he sat down at the head of the conference table. Marnie gave herself an invisible pat on the back for not taking the chair. All right, so then 3, 2, 1, but I kept
Okay.
going. But while she was silently gloating over a non-victory, Mr. Boss was making his way toward the back of the room, straight toward her. "I hope you all had a wonderful weekend and have had plenty of time to discuss during the delay." "Sorry about that," Mr. Boss said, his voice hovering over her as he stood back leaning against the wall right next to her. "My fault." Mr. Boss's dad waved it away. "No worries. Let's get started. The meeting should be short. I only have one thing I'd like to discuss. Viral videos." Mr. Boss's dad's face beamed as he made the statement, as if he was very proud of himself. But when no one responded, he repeated himself. "Viral videos. You have heard of them, right?" Everyone looked slightly confused. Then a young guy who looked like he belonged in the tech department spoke up, excuse me. "What about viral videos, sir?" "Well, I think we should make one." And then I was getting too close to time, and so I wrote a paragraph.
Okay.
I
Why
wrote a
do I
paragraph about
love
where it's going, so I don't forget.
I love Mr. Boss's dad. He just has the best idea, and he's like, "Hey, everyone, I'm going to revitalize our company. We're going to do a viral video." And he's like, "Nice. I
Yeah,
love that because I don't want him to be grumpy and mean and, awful. I mean, maybe
right.
he is, but in this scenario, like my first impression is tremendous. He can shatter it if you want him to, but that's great.
No, that's
And
exactly who he is.
oh, good. And
Mhm.
that explains too why Mr. Boss is kind of how he is. Now I've got to know what his mother was like. Ooh.
Right.
Ooh, I bet she's a piece of work.
Maybe. I didn't think about that's good.
Because
That's
if she's
good.
married to that guy, I don't know. They're either the fizzy wigs from Christmas Carol, or she's awful. There's like no two other choices in my brain. I don't know
Right.
why.
That's
Anyway, how
awesome.
it's a wonderful character piece, and what's so interesting is sadly I have been not necessarily late for a situation like that because my punctuality could never, but feeling that same kind of a feeling, like where you get all like even warm inside and you almost feel like you can feel that your hair is super greasy. Like, even if it's not, like you suddenly feel this I am a gutter creature feeling because
Right.
you're late and you've got to go walk into this room. Yeah.
Right.
So, anyway, I really enjoyed that. I'm glad we had time for you to read the whole
Yeah.
thing.
And if anyone's curious of like how it fits the prompt, everyone's gonna be like, "You don't just make a viral video," and she's going to disagree. Because this is what her
Mm.
degree is that like there are ways, because you know that there are ways that corporations like grease the right palms and of the right influencers. And anyway, so then she's going to end up having to work on a video with Mr. Boss. So
I
that's the
feel
setting.
like I feel like Mr. Boss's father got the ideal from her. Maybe something she kind of just, and then
Mhm.
it's going to be like, "Oh, but Marnie said blah blah blah," and all the heads can go right to her, and she doesn't maybe recall. Anyway, this isn't where my anyway. Whatever, we can brainstorm some other time.
No, it's going to be from his grandkids, and then all of a sudden Marnie's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Boss is married." So then there's going to be a conflict there because we know he's an only son,
And
but no
you
one ever
have to
mentions
have
the
a
daughter.
disaster.
Yeah, and nobody knows about the daughter because she just has chosen not to be in the corporation, but, like, they know that he's the only son. So she's
Ooh,
gonna think that, yeah.
and I want to know about this daughter too. Like, is she, Daddy, I want a golden goose? Or
You're like very much in Christmas Carol mode right now.
well, that's a Willy Wonka reference, but yes.
Oh, that's true. That is okay.
Yes. Anyway, how fun. I just love this whole world and this whole thing.
Me too.
So thanks for writing in that world. Just for me, I'm sure. Just
Well,
kidding.
thanks for enjoying it because it makes
Yeah,
me want to write it in even more.
I love it. Love it so much. Okay, so follow that with my disaster. Like, really, it's not so bad. It's just, it's a nothing of a thing. It's writing because writing must be done, I
Right?
feel. So,
I
anyway,
guarantee it's gonna be better than you think.
well, here it is for
Okay.
what it's worth. Blah. Again, I did a fiction spin. I didn't necessarily take it in a personal. Okay, so here we go. Something, because the something I would regret saying would just be too salty for on air. Anyway.
Right. I was gonna say I think it's very interesting that the two of us both chose to not put when I know that both of us have definitely said things we would regret. Like, so I
Let's
find
just.
it very we're just not gonna go there because
Nope.
it's live.
Oh gosh. Okay, so here we go.
Okay.
When the sun came up on that brisk April morning, everyone in the house was still asleep. Everyone, that is, except for Millicent. Mommy, Daddy, wake up, she cried, rushing into her parents' bedroom. Oh, Millie, her mother sighed. What time is it? Her father grumbled. You promised we could go to the egg drop today. You promised. That's right, dear. We did promise, Mommy said, then moaned and put a pillow over her head. But why did we promise? Daddy said, cradling his head in his hands. Don't worry, I'll get brother ready, the 3-year-old shouted as she ran from the room. This was enough to catapult Mom from the bed. Millie, let Mommy help. Millie! Daddy groaned and stretched. Even though the two adults shared a conspiratorial, yawning glance at one another, it was difficult for either of them to stay grumpy and tired in the wake of Millicent's delighted skip to the car. Hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way, she sang. She clutched her purple stuffed bunny, and as they drove, she entertained her brother with it, the coos and squeals these antics elicited from the baby, warming the parents' hearts further still. By the time they pulled into the giant field where the helicopter was due to arrive and drop some 10,000 plastic eggs, or so had boasted the advertisement Mommy and Daddy had seen last week, the entire family was in good spirits. Do they only have the container potties here? Millicent asked her father as he was unbuckling her car seat. He turned to look in the direction of her anxious glance. Container potties? She's talking about the porta-johns, his wife explained. Yes, Millicent. Why, do you need to use the bathroom? Millicent did not answer. She just continued to stroke one ear of her purple bunny, gazing at the row of big plastic booths. If you need to go, now's the time, kiddo, her dad said. Mom had retrieved brother from his side of the car and had tucked him into a baby wrap. I can hold Bunny, Mom offered. But we're already late, Millicent protested. I don't want to miss the hectocopter. You won't miss it, sweetheart, Daddy said, plucking the toy from his daughter's hands. Here, Mommy, we'll be right back. With that, he hoisted Millicent from her seat, pressed the button to close the van door, and headed for the row of portable toilets. They look like teeth, Millicent said, like big blue teeth. You think so? Uh-huh. Okay, well, here's how we're going to do this, small fry. I'm going to get you all set up, and then you're going to do your business. I'll stand out here, and when you're done, you just call out to me, and I'll help you finish up, okay? Okay. The first part of Daddy's plan went off without a hitch, and he stood amused, listening to Millicent sing as she, and then the timer ran out.
Oh no.
So what was going to happen, which I didn't get to it, was that a motorcycle or something with a really loud engine was going to come by, and she was going to be like, I'm missing it, and come like busting out.
Oh, good.
But I
Not
didn't
fall
get
in.
to it. Yeah, no.
I was like, oh.
Anyway, I didn't get to it, and I was just like done. So
Okay, my
that was the
favorite is how
plan.
she pronounced helicopter. So well done. Like again, dialogue. Like you could have you could read a sentence right now and I could tell you who it was that was speaking just from that little bit of you introducing the characters because you
Oh,
do a
thank
really
you.
great job of like keeping the dialogue, like the personalities within the dialogue. So well done, Jamie. I love it. I thought it was really sweet. I loved it.
Oh, I appreciate that. The hectocopter, that is how I said helicopter when I was little. In fact,
Aw.
there's a famous story in my family where we were cooking out and I saw a helicopter and I was like, hectocopter, hectocopter. And I backed up and like burned my arm on the grill. So anyway, I've
Aw.
heard my whole life how I used to say helicopter.
I love it. That makes it
Yeah.
even sweeter. Aw. So that was actually little Jamie that we were, like,
Little
watching it.
Jamie. Yeah, hippity hoppity Easter's on. And then Riley said container potty, my oldest, when she
Oh.
was small. She called him a container potty, which is so funny. It makes me think of like Tupperware that you used to
Oh. That's a whole other image.
Yes.
Well done, Jamie. I really enjoyed it. Christy says too. She says both the stories are so good. Thanks, Christy. We
Oh,
appreciate that.
appreciate that.
You guys can do this too. We are nothing
Yeah,
special. We will tell you that over
no.
and over again that we are nothing special. So,
And it's a
yeah.
good way to work out that writing muscle. You know, it's like
Mhm.
one thing to publish prolifically, it's another thing to write well. And some people do both, don't get me wrong, but I'm
Right.
just kind of saying, like, if you want to be a better writer, the way to it is the way through it. Write lots and lots of stuff that you think is terrible. It doesn't ever
Mhm.
need to see the light of day. But again, if you want to play the cello, you got to put in those hours, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so that concludes the sprint portion. Unless you all want to share in our Facebook group what you wrote for 15 minutes, we always love to see that. Love to see the different takes on the same prompt. And I guess we're on to the what's next. Christy says no writing is ever wasted. That is
Agreed.
for sure.
Mhm.
Jen, what's next for you?
Well, I'm still working on cover things and I have. But this week's gonna be crazy though. I don't know that I'm gonna get any work done because my daughter is coming home from college. So
Yay!
she's finishing up her first year at college, and we go pick her up. We have to go down to Illinois and pick her up from school and bring her home. And I cannot wait because
Gosh, time flies, man.
it sure does. So that's what we have going on is getting ready for that. And but I can take my laptop. So I might actually get more work done this week than others because my husband will drive and I just have like, you know, my laptop and can get work done. So, and with this new laptop, the battery lasts forever.
Nice.
So, yeah, I don't have to worry about charging it. So, yeah, I think that's probably what I'll do is I'll try to get some car work done. What about you, James? What are you doing this week?
I do not know. I think so. This whole microphone setup is exactly what I also use to do the audiobook. So if I can bring myself to move it all back into the closet, I literally have been recording into a closet.
Mhm.
If I want to finish getting One Quiet Afternoon ready for audiobook, I have to still record the introduction and the conclusion and the credits and things like that. So fingers crossed I'll do that this week. And then I'm considering narrating A Knight's Gift next. But I really have to evaluate whether I want to do a single compilation with just like everything that I possibly have ready right now, which may be the way that I go for reasons that I will disclose at a later time. Or
Mhm.
if I want to try to wait until I have like sort of a more fairy tale science fiction collection versus a more this is all women's fiction collection. But it's like I don't know that I want to create more to make that happen, or if it could just
Right.
all go in one big lump. So I just have some decisions to make that way. And then, anyway, at least it's writerly. Yay!
Right. That could be a whole nother podcast episode is decision making in your writing. Like there's
Yeah.
just all the decisions you don't know you have to make until you become a writer, right?
And the
There's so
problem,
many.
yes. And the problem is, unless you are going to continue to seek external validation, and for that, you need to have people that you trust who are not necessarily only readers, but who are also writers and who know
Mhm.
your goals. Like there is not another person to entrust these decisions to. So
Right.
having all of the control means you also have all of the accountability. And that's something that's not
Agreed.
talked about enough as independent authors. And I find it interesting that the independent authors who grow to any scale
Mhm.
eventually end up outsourcing a lot of this work. And it's
Yeah.
almost like they're trad pubbing, but just with their own people. It
Yeah.
like takes a lot of people to do a traditionally published route. And it's all on you as the independent author. And
Right.
I don't know. And now I'm just kind of, again, waxing poetic or griping, or I don't know what I'm doing.
They're one and the same.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right, Jen. There is an awful lot on the independent author's shoulders. And again, it's so funny because I always think if I would have known, I don't know that I ever would have done NaNoWriMo even the first time, if I would have known all of the mountain that is ahead of me. It's so funny. Remember that one piece of advice you would give yourself? And I was like, just go get a job.
But then you never would have met me.
I know. You're right. And this whole podcast and all of the people that I've met because of it, like it's astounding. If you ever just took a piece of paper and a pencil and wrote down every name that you know because of your writing career.
I've not. That's a good idea though. It'd be a great like gratitude journal.
Yes,
entry.
absolutely. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you. I know it can sound just like platitudes or something like that, but you have no idea an anchor that you've been in my storms. And I appreciate you and love you, all of you.
Same. Absolutely same.
All right. So I think we've kind of exhausted the episode just in time. I need to get back to work. So this concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. Until next time, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye,
Bye, everyone.